A girl named Wanda tells her brother, Lucas, about a sleep experiment she wants to participate in so she can make some money. However, Lucas doesn't think it's a good idea and suggests she's up to something. He says that after Wanda's divorce, she has been doing things secretly since living with him and his wife, Gloria. He also says she's always hiding behind her anxiety and depression without actually going to get help from a doctor. Wanda believes there's something more to his complaints, because after hearing him tell her several times to get a job, the moment she gets one and asks for his car to drive there, he takes offense and thinks it's not good. Gloria also joins in the conversation and tells Wanda that it's weird that she actually wants to go for an experiment she found from an online clickbait survey. She also talks about how unsafe it is, but Wanda says she just wants to leave. Before things escalate, Lucas tells them to call it a night and they'll talk about it again in the morning. That night, Wanda cannot sleep, and she eventually picks up her bag and heads to the living room. There, she picks up Lucas's car keys and sneaks out of the house, but she gets startled by Lucas, who is standing outside the house. He is surprised to see Wanda trying to sneak out, but he says she can leave with his car. Wanda looks confused, but Lucas says he wants to support her. With this, Wanda heads into the car and starts driving to the location of the experiment. After a while, she arrives at the location, but it only happens to be a parking lot. As she looks around, a man named Victor comes to meet her. Victor happens to know her name and he asks if she's there for the experiment. She says she is, and then Victor says he works for the doctor who will be conducting the experiment. He also mentions that the experiment will be conducted inside an old school, which doesn't usually appear on digital maps. Wanda then follows him as he says the doctor has been waiting for her. When Wanda enters the building, she walks around and goes into one of the rooms. While she's in there, she gets startled by a lady named Margot, who also comes in. Margot introduces herself to Wanda and says she's also there for the experiment. She says sorry for scaring Wanda, after which she says it's good that the experiment is real, because she had doubts about the online survey she filled out. Suddenly, the doctor comes in to welcome them and says his name is Richard. He also introduces them to another participant named Theo. He says they now have to wait for one more person, but offers to start the preliminary tests on Wanda. After the tests, Dr. Richard shows them where he'll be conducting the experiment. When Theo says it reminds him of his high school classroom, the doctor explains that the school used to be an overflow ward during the COVID-19 pandemic. He also adds that even though the building was about to be demolished, he got his funding for the sleep research right on time and was able to secure the place. He mentions that the school will now be a place for doctors to conduct research. Wanda asks about his study, and Richard says he's working on sleep paralysis. As she looks surprised, Theo says the doctor thinks he can make them experience it. Wanda then says she doesn't want to take any experimental drugs, but Dr. Richard says it won't be necessary because all he needs is their time and an open mind. He adds that he'll fill them in with the other details when the last person arrives. As they walk out, they see a guy named Porter, who is the last participant in the experiment. Porter is a very jovial person who jokes about the experiment. Shortly after, Dr. Richard leads all of them back into the room for the experiment. After completing the preliminary tests on Porter, the doctor then asks if any of them has ever experienced sleep paralysis before. They all say they've not experienced it, and he says his experiment is to study their minds to understand sleep paralysis and night terrors. He also says their lack of experience is why he chose them for the experiment. He says the focus will be to explore the part of their mind that leads to night terrors. He also adds that even though no one has carried out such research before, he wants to understand how to open the part of their minds linked with night terrors, so he can understand how to close it back. The participants are all confused with his explanation, but he says they don't have to be worried about using any drug because he'll hypnotize them. Wanda is shocked to hear this, but Dr. Richard says he's an expert who has helped people in the past with his knowledge of hypnosis. Theo says it sounds interesting and he's still up for it, but Wanda is worried about their mental health. Theo doesn't seem to care, and the doctor also tells them they're in safe hands. However, Porter has his concerns as he doesn't believe hypnosis is good. He also says Dr. Richard doesn't look like a doctor and he might even look familiar. Just as Dr. Richard tells Porter to trust him, Margot also says Porter needs to believe that there's a world of possibilities he hasn't even explored yet. As Porter continues to have objections, Wanda says he can leave if he doesn't want to proceed with the experiment. Porter, however, says he's staying because he needs the money. Dr. Richard then tells them that the experiment will start on the next day, which is when he'll take away their phones and car keys and hand them over to Victor, who will take them away and return after the experiments are over in a week. Wanda asks why they have to drop their keys, and the doctor tells them a story of someone who experienced sleep paralysis that made him sleepwalk and head into his car to drive and eventually get into an accident. That night, they continue talking about hypnosis, and while they all have different opinions about it, Dr. Richard says hypnosis is only good when it's done by a licensed hypnotist. Wanda then asks him why he's interested in sleep paralysis. He says he's also a victim who suffered a lot from it due to his anxiety. He adds that it's interesting to him that the symptoms and experiences of people with sleep paralysis have never changed since the first case was recorded many years ago. He says there's always a shadow-like witch called the Hag, causing terror in the mind. Shortly after, Porter brings his music player and calls everyone to dance. While Porter is dancing along with Margot and Theo, Wanda doesn't join them, and Dr. Richard comes to sit with her. He asks why she's not dancing, and she says she doesn't like it. He also says it's the same for him, because he has a leg problem that has always made him feel anxious. Wanda says she also feels anxious and shy sometimes, but she's now trying to put herself out and take risks, which is one of the reasons why she came for the experiment. Richard asks what she hopes to gain from the experiment, because she's not like the others who are concerned about the payment. Wanda says she's just searching for some confidence, and he tells her she's stronger than she thinks. Just then, Porter calls them to join the dance, and they finally get up. The next day, Dr. Richard calls them all for the experiment. When they're with him, he brings out a book and asks them to follow his instructions as they close their eyes. Richard then starts hypnotizing them, and as he counts down from 10 and reaches 1, it seems to work, and Wanda finds herself in a blue room that happens to be in her mind. As she looks around, she sees the witch doctor Richard talked about, and also hears someone screaming for help. Suddenly, she hears Richard's voice telling her to wake up, and with this, she returns to reality and sees all the other participants wake up. They all talk about how what they saw was intense, and Wanda soon says she needs to use the restroom. While she's in there, Margot meets her there, and as she talks about what she saw, Margot realizes she saw the same thing. They immediately confront Richard about it, but he says it's likely because their minds must have replicated what they talked about when they were discussing things that happened during sleep paralysis. Margot and Wanda then ask about the screams, while Theo starts to regret why he came for the experiment. The doctor assures them that there's nothing wrong, and he needs to write down his preliminary notes. He tells them to go and get something to eat or drink until he's through. However, Theo says he needs to be alone and walks out. Wanda and the others go outside, and she mentions that something must be wrong with the experiment because even Dr. Richard looks shocked by what happened to them. Porter also says he feels he was right about his suspicions that the doctor is up to something. Meanwhile, Theo is alone in his room, and as he closes his eyes to sleep, he experiences sleep paralysis and sees himself in the blue room, shouting for someone to wake him up. He immediately wakes up and then walks outside to meet the others. He tells the doctor that he's not feeling too well, and as Porter offers him something to drink, Dr. Richard tells him to drink moderately because he still needs to get accurate notes about their experiences in the morning. Wanda is curious as to what the doctor expects in the morning, and he says if all things go well, they're supposed to experience a case of sleep paralysis when they go to bed that night. Margot asks what would happen if they don't, and Dr. Richard says it means his research is off to a bad start. Porter also asks if they'll still get their money, and the doctor says they will, but they'd have to wait until Victor returns with their keys in a week. When Wanda still sounds confused, Dr. Richard says he can call Victor to bring it at any time, but it's only if there is a need for that. That night, while everyone is asleep, Richard experiences sleep paralysis and sees the Hag, but he looks happy with what he sees. When the Hag leaves his room, she heads to Wanda's room next, as Wanda also seems to be experiencing sleep paralysis. All the participants experience the same thing, as the Hag also visits them. However, Theo happens to be the one who gets affected the most, and he happens to scream in his sleep, after which the Hag climbs his body. He shouts for someone to wake him up, but it's too late, as the hag moves closer to his face and possesses him. The next morning, the other participants start looking for Theo, but don't find him. They immediately call Dr. Richard's attention to the situation, but he seems really calm. Wanda tells him that Theo was shouting for help last night, and they all heard him. But this doesn't seem to bother Richard, who is more concerned about whether they saw the hag. Later on, while discussing what they saw as well as Theo's disappearance, Dr. Richard tells them that Theo might have left the school and gone back home because he was scared. He also mentions that without proper treatment, Theo will now suffer from sleep disorders, leaving the others scared. Later on, Wanda asks how the doctor knows Theo left voluntarily, and Richard then takes them to watch the video footage from the cameras in the rooms and hallways. The video shows how Theo left his room and walked away, but the way he walked looked strange. Wanda finds it really weird and asks if they can call the police, but Dr. Richard says it's unlikely that they'll find anything else, but if it lets her mind be at rest, then she can call. Wanda, however, decides against it. That night, though, they all experience sleep paralysis again, and the hag appears to all of them. She scares all the participants, and they can't help but scream. A while later, she eventually goes to meet Dr. Richard and possesses him. The next morning, the participants start looking for the doctor, but can't find him. This leaves them confused and worried, with Margot explaining that the hag came really close to her. Porter starts walking around and tells them that he's going to check the video footage, and they follow him. When they get to Richard's office and start watching the footage, they all see how Richard strangely stands up from his bed and walks around like Theo. They all conclude that he's sleepwalking, but Porter has had enough and says he's leaving because he doesn't understand what's happening. After he picks up his bag and is about to leave, Wanda tells him to stay so they can figure out what's happening together. However, Porter says he can't wait because one of them could disappear next. Wanda still tries to convince him, but Porter says he's not changing his mind and he'll come back when Victor is around. He asks Margot if she's coming with him, but she says he might be overreacting. Victor gets tired of explaining himself and eventually leaves. As he walks out, Margot asks Wanda if she has a plan, and when she says she doesn't, Margot asks why Wanda doesn't want to leave. Wanda gets defensive and says she doesn't understand what Margot means. However, Margot says Wanda looks like she's trying to stay back. Wanda finally confesses and says she doesn't have where to go back to, and that's why she's hoping she can stay at the school for longer. After a while, Wanda starts going through Dr. Richard's notes, and she sees Victor's number and calls him. She tells Victor that the doctor is missing and he needs to come back, but Victor doesn't think it's the right thing to do because it's against the doctor's instructions. Wanda begs him to come, saying they need his help, and Victor agrees. Later that day, as she keeps reading Dr. Richard's notes, she comes across an article about healthy people who died in their sleep after having nightmares. Wanda and Margot are confused as to why Richard has the article, but they can't find anything else in his notes except details about his sleep paralysis experience and the hag. That night, Victor returns to the school, but as he enters, Dr. Richard appears to still be sleepwalking behind him. As Victor tries to get closer to the doctor, the hag comes out and kills him. Elsewhere, Margot starts to think they should have followed Porter, but Wanda says she has a feeling it would have been a bad decision. Suddenly, Margot sees Dr. Richard sleepwalking in the hallway. She informs Wanda, but as they try to find the doctor, they bump into Porter, who is back at the school. He says he missed the bus, and it's almost like they're in a ghost town because there is no one around, and the police station also closes on weekends. Much later, after he's settled, he asks Wanda if she has a plan. As Wanda's plan doesn't sound good enough, Porter says they can as well avoid sleeping, and Wanda supports it. They agree to take turns to sleep, so that if anything is going wrong, they can wake whoever is sleeping. Margot and Wanda take the first shift while Porter sleeps. As time passes, Margot gets really sleepy, and when Wanda goes to get more coffee, she sleeps off. Suddenly, Porter wakes up and starts sleepwalking, and he's already at the door when Margot wakes up. She runs after him, but he disappears before she can get to him. Margot gets really scared and tells Wanda about what happened. Wanda then says the only way they might be able to stop the nightmares and sleep paralysis is if they're able to close the door Dr. Richard opened in their minds. She comes up with a plan and takes Margot into a room where she starts hypnotizing her just as Dr. Richard did. The hag appears to be trying to take over Margot's body, but Wanda can't see her. She, however, sees Dr. Richard, Theo, and Porter sleepwalking and heading for her. Just as Margot starts shouting for someone to wake her, Wanda does, and the hag disappears along with the sleepwalking men. Margot is terrified as she wakes up, and she says she's going to get water to drink. After she walks out, Wanda decides to follow her, but suddenly sees that Margot is now sleepwalking. Suddenly, Wanda realizes that she has been experiencing sleep paralysis, and the hag is now trying to take over her body. As she shouts for someone to wake her, she hears Dr. Richard's voice telling her to wake up. She wakes up and sees the doctor asking if she's all right, with the other participants also just waking up from their sleep paralysis as well. It turns out that they'd been experiencing sleep paralysis since Dr. Richard first hypnotized them in his office, a day after they arrived at the school. As she realizes what happened, Wanda starts screaming as she tells him that she's not okay. Thanks for tuning in. A thumbs up would be amazing because I've got some bills to pay.
Big dog status, I'm a big